Incredible moment. Puppy's touching plea for help. Transforms police officer's life forever. Jake Miller leaned against the cool metal of his patrol car, the distant sounds of Maplewood fading into a dull hum. His mind was a jumbled mess. Today's domestic disputes, a bar fight he broke up, and those desperate faces at home that seemed to linger in the corners of his thoughts. This small town, with its sun-drenched streets and friendly waves, felt suffocating, a cage lined with badges instead of bars. Surrounded by the tranquil cadence of life, he was trapped in a whirlwind of loneliness, wearing a uniform that demanded respect while secretly wishing to find an escape. Then, it happened. Out of the corner of his eye, he spotted a small, trembling figure by the side of the road. He slowed the car, heart racing, as he took in the sight of an abandoned puppy, its imploring eyes wide with fear and desperation. It mirrored his own feelings, the yearning for connection, the desperate hope to be seen. Almost instinctively, he stepped out, his heartbeat thrumming louder in his ears with each stride. He scooped the shivering pup into his arms, an impulse to protect overwhelming him. "I'll call you Buddy," he murmured, as the tiny creature snuggled into him, seeking warmth and safety. Laughter crackled through the dim veneer of his desolation, memories of his children splashing through puddles, playing fetch in the park flooding his mind. Yet, as he returned to his car, he felt the weight of his colleagues' judgmental glares. They joked that he should focus on policing, leaving no room for emotional attachments. "Stick to the job, Miller," they'd say. But Buddy's innocent antics began unraveling the tightly wound threads of Jake's heart, forcing him to confront the void within, the guilt, the shame, the love he felt escaping him. Caught in his routine, Jake was thrown into an existential tug-of-war. Could he juggle this newfound responsibility while trying to fix the cracks in his family? The stakes were high. He often found himself losing focus on the job, his mind drifting to cherished moments that now felt so far away. On nights when the stars twinkled like distant dreams, Jake lay awake picturing his wife's initial disappointment turning to anger, their children's silent withdrawal, and the chasm that widened each day. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Just as Jake felt the warmth of companionship with Buddy slowly blossoming, an unexpected call pierced the night, a violent domestic disturbance. As he arrived on the chaotic scene, his heart raced anew. The air was tense, and as he began assessing the situation, Jake heard a rustle at his feet. Buddy had followed him, instincts pulling him into harm's way. Panic surged through Jake's veins. Should he abandon his partner to shield the pup, or adhere to the protocol drilled into him, risking Buddy's safety? In that moment of crisis, Jake teetered on the brink of a profound realization. Each decision created ripples echoing toward his shattered home life. They intertwined his duty and desire, his role as a protector, and as a man desperate for forgiveness. There, in that volatile conflict between instinct and responsibility, Jake felt the weight of his heart bearing down. An abyss was opening beneath him, and he had to choose. Would he confront the loneliness he had harbored for so long, change his course, or would he continue to spiral deeper into despair? Jake felt his throat tighten. The chaos surrounding the domestic disturbance swirled into a chaotic maelstrom as he considered Buddy's fate. He couldn't let fear dictate his next move. It was time to forge a path toward not just duty, but sincerity. As he focused on the scene, he forced himself to breathe deeply, reaching for that space deep within, the wellspring of compassion that redefined who he was. The image of his children flashed in his mind, the innocence in their laughter, juxtaposed with the harshness of violence he witnessed often. Moving cautiously, he assessed the individuals involved in the escalating argument. A man's voice boomed, filled with rage, while a woman cowered in the corner of the porch, desperately clutching a small child. Jake's heart surged with instinct, a primal urge to intervene and protect. But how could he safeguard Buddy as well? The decision sharpened, coming into focus amidst the chaos. He wouldn't let his dog become collateral damage to his profession's rigid expectations. "Buddy, stay close," Jake said quietly, his voice steady despite the tumult. The dog instinctively nestled against his leg, a subtle reminder that loyalty can take many forms. Stepping forward, Jake called out to the distraught man, projecting authority tempered with compassion. "Hey, let's talk this through. You don't need to shout." As the tense conversation unfolded, Jake found himself anchoring the chaos with a calm he didn't know he possessed. For the first time in what felt like years, he felt a flicker of clarity illuminating his otherwise clouded thoughts. This wasn't just about upholding the law, it was about human connection, the fragile threads of empathy that held communities together. It dawned on him. He could be more than a badge. He could be a bridge. After de-escalating the situation through effective communication, the man gradually calmed, allowing Jake to guide him and the family toward safety. In that moment, Jake saw the flicker of hope reignite in the woman's eyes, the recognition of potential harmony amid despair. It was a revelation for him, too. He wasn't merely a detached enforcer of laws. He could engineer change through kindness and human dignity. Once the situation settled, Jake found Buddy nestled against his thigh, providing a grounding presence that accompanied his sense of fulfillment. It wasn't just a shift in role, it was a transformation inside himself. He realized that he could rewrite his narrative by embracing the vulnerability that arose from connections. Buddy had pulled him from isolation, and in return, he was uncovering depths of strength within. As he wrapped things up, Jake felt the familiar weight of guilt nudge at him. Would his colleagues understand this new version of himself? Would they dismiss him as soft, unable to discipline? Yet within that uncertainty, an unfamiliar courage took root. A commitment to harmonize his duties with compassion, a resolve to not just protect the law but also nurture the community. And as he slid back into his patrol car with Buddy contracting beside him, the discomfort of impending conversations brewed beneath the surface. The darkness was still there, the specter of his strained home life, but now he sensed an ember of hope illuminating a potential path toward redemption. Yet, the deeper challenge loomed ahead. Could he confront his family with this newfound resolve? Or would the walls he'd built only fortify the divisions? The moment drew near as he gripped the wheel tightly, caught in the tug-of-war between fear and growth. The choice was his, but the stakes intertwined the past and the potential for a future yet to be written. With his heart pounding, he pulled out onto the road, knowing that every mile traveled would lead him to one undeniable truth. The time had come to face his family. The weight of anticipation hung heavily in the air as Jake maneuvered the cruiser down familiar streets, each block reinforcing the reality of what awaited him. It was almost as if the asphalt beneath the tires whispered reminders of the past, the missed moments, the unresolved tensions. Increasingly, his heart beat in tandem with a growing resolve to break free from the shackles of his old self. The familiar sounds of the neighborhood faded behind him, replaced by an enveloping silence suffused with thoughts that spun in different directions. Could he truly share the courage he'd found on the porch with his wife and kids? What if they couldn't accept this new version of him? The shadows of doubt flitted around his consciousness, seemingly determined to drown out the flickers of light. "Okay, buddy," he said, glancing at his dog who looked up at him with knowing eyes. "Maybe they'll listen." Pulling into his driveway, he parked the cruiser with a sense of purpose underlying the mechanical motions. Exiting the car, he felt the softened earth beneath his feet, a grounding contrast to the tumult of his feelings. Jake took a moment, breathing in the scent of warm grass and the jasmine that bloomed nearby. They would need to hear this, to understand that he wasn't just the man in uniform anymore. He was a husband and a father who sought connection despite the barriers. Entering the house, the familiar sights greeted him like ghosts. Framed pictures lined the walls, memories encapsulated in time, capturing better days and smiles. As he stepped further inside, the soft murmur of his children's voices reached his ears, a grounding reminder of what he fought for. The tension in his gut roiled as he approached the living room, where laughter danced in the air. But it also served to sharpen his resolve. With Buddy by his side, he stood at the threshold, watching as his wife helped their youngest with a puzzle, They were a picture of domestic bliss, and yet the disconnect he felt surged, an echo of the emotional prison he'd built. How could he break that down? "Megan," he called, his voice steady but thick with unvoiced emotions. She turned, eyes brightening at the sight of him. "Hey, Jake, you're home early." "Can we talk?" he asked, gesturing for the kids to stay put. An uninvited wave of hesitation washed over him as he crossed the living room to sit with her. The pause hung like a heavy curtain. "What's up?" she inquired gently, concern etching her brow. She sensed the shift in the air, as if the entirety of his unspoken words hung between them. Taking a deep breath, Jake began to open himself, revealing the fragility of his experiences, the rush of fear amidst uncertainty, the tremors of doubt that come with vulnerability. It was in that moment he realized he was framing a new narrative, not just statements of professional duty, but a dialogue of personal truth. He started, but the words felt stuck in his throat. "I've been thinking a lot about what it means to be a good husband, father, officer. It's not just being there to uphold rules. It's more. I want to be present, to connect." Megan's expression shifted as she absorbed his sincerity, her gaze flickering with unexpected understanding. "What do you mean?" He glanced at his children, the innocent joy radiating from them illuminating the otherwise dim corners of his conscience. "I want to bridge the gaps I've built, to recognize the humanity we all share. Not just with you and the kids, but in my work too. I want to create a home filled with compassion. And—" He hesitated again, guilt gnawing at him as vulnerability confronted him. "And?" She pushed softly, the warmth in her tone drawing him back. "I need to let go of the walls I've built," he admitted, feelings cascading into words. "I want us to start over in a new way, together." The atmosphere shifted, a silent invitation hanging like a breath held in unwavering anticipation. Jake's heart pounded as he awaited her reply, feeling exposed yet exhilarated by this newfound honesty. "Can you handle that?" she finally asked, her tone a blend of hope and caution. Before he could respond, the doorbell rang, shattering the moment with a stark reminder that outside pressures always encroached on personal revelations. He exchanged a glance with Megan, a flicker of tension passing between them. As he rose to answer the door, a determination settled in his gut. This was only the beginning of a conversation he desperately needed, and beyond that door, change awaited. How would his family react to what lay ahead? Could this door herald a connection he'd been seeking but bypassed before? With every intention to breach old barriers, he opened the door, ready for whatever lay beyond. The door swung open, revealing a figure from the past. Jake's breath hitched as he recognized his former partner, Sam, standing before him, rain-drenched and weary, a stark contrast to the warmth of the home behind him. The familiar camaraderie of their years on duty flickered like a dying flame, then ignited grudging curiosity. "Sam?" Jake asked, his voice tinged with surprise and a hint of confusion. "What are you doing here?" "I know this isn't the best time, but I need to tell you something important," Sam replied urgently, glancing over his shoulder. The tension in Sam's voice cut through the lingering warmth of the earlier moment with Megan. Jake stepped aside, inviting Sam in, but his heart raced not from excitement but apprehension. He could feel Megan's eyes on him, a mix of concern and uncertainty swirling in the air. What had Sam gotten himself into so urgently? Once inside, Sam shook off the rain, casting a look at the family photos lining the walls. It was clear he felt out of place in Jake's newly evolving world. The distance between them felt monumental. It had been a long time since they'd worked together, a long time since Jake felt part of their brotherhood defined by a shared mission. "Can we talk in your office?" Sam suggested, trying to maintain a professional tone as he motioned toward a door leading further into the house. Jake nodded, leading his former partner to the small space that had been his sanctuary, filled with reminders of duty. The clutter of job-related paraphernalia mirrored the chaos in his mind. As he settled into his chair, he felt the weight of the past cresting along with the uncertainty of the future. "Jake, I'm in a bit of a pickle," Sam started, shifting nervously in his seat. "I've been following leads on a case we worked on years ago, the one that got swept under the rug. It's messier than I thought, and I could really use your insight. Jake's eyes narrowed, caught off guard. The case had left both of them rattled, but he was no longer the soldier ready to dive into the fray. He was a man seeking empathy and connection, not conflict. Sam, I'm not sure I can go back to that mindset. I need to focus on my family, on being present, he admitted, feeling the familiar reluctance to re-enter the turmoil of his former calling bubble up within him. But you're the only one who can help me now. If we don't act, people are going to get hurt. There's a web of corruption, and I feel like I'm being watched. Sam pressed, desperation edging his words. Jake's heart raced. Here was a call to action. A professional dilemma colliding head-on with the personal path he intended to forge. Duty tugged at him, whispering remnants of loyalty, camaraderie, and justice, while the other part screamed for simplicity, for family, for peace. Megan's voice cut through his internal conflict. Jake? She asked softly from the doorway, sensing the shift in the atmosphere. He felt cornered, pulled between the necessity of his old life and the fresh commitments he was attempting to build. Give me a moment, he said briefly to Sam, then stepped outside to join Megan. Their gazes locked in a silent understanding, thick with unspoken fears. Do you need to help him? She asked, hesitation lacing her voice. Jake felt the weight of the question settle heavily on his shoulders. Was he prepared to dive back into the chaos of his old life? Could he maintain the connection with his family he had started to mend while facing this resurgence of duty? I don't know, he admitted, feeling tension coil within him. But I can't just leave him. As Megan's eyes searched his face, a determination began to crystallize in his mind. A commitment not just to assist Sam, but to manage the delicate balance of his own journey. Okay, he said, a newfound clarity resonating within him. Let's see where this leads us. As he returned to Sam, Jake felt the gravity of the moment trap him between two worlds, both demanding his full self. And in that intersection, he felt something shift again, a spark igniting his purpose anew, ready to redefine what being a protector truly meant. What might this choice cost him? And would he find a way to integrate this part of himself with the husband and father he was striving to become? As he prepared to engage with Sam, he realized that the road ahead was anything but straightforward. It required courage and clarity for the path he was determined to walk. Let's talk, Jake said, steeling himself for the conversation that would draw him back to conflict, pressure, and pressing decisions. Jake faced Sam across the small desk, the weight of a decade shared in silence pressing down around them. The room felt claustrophobic. The clutter on the desk mirrored the turmoil rising in Jake's chest. He could see the urgency in Sam's eyes, a look fueled by desperation that cracked the veneer of their past friendship. Jake, you have to understand, Sam continued, the edge in his voice a reminder that time wasn't a luxury they possessed. This isn't just some cold case. It's alive. And if we don't pull together what we know, more than just answers are at stake. Jake clenched his jaw, a storm brewing inside him. He shifted in his chair, pushing through the disconcerting feelings of nostalgia that threatened to derail him. Memories of late-night stakeouts, adrenaline-fueled pursuits, and shared victories tugged at him. But those memories were also laced with loss, the reminders of choices he had made that led him to distance himself from that life. What do you want me to do, Sam? I'm not that guy anymore, Jake replied, his voice firmer than he felt. You have the insight into this case, and with your family background you can dig deeper where I might get shut down, Sam explained. The pleading tone was unmistakable. It tugged at something inside Jake, stirring emotions he thought he had neatly tucked away. I promise we can do this together. We can figure it out and then I'll leave you alone. At that moment, a flicker of a decision began to form within him, challenging his understanding of duty and loyalty. The world outside his carefully constructed life threatened to swallow him whole, pulling him back into the fray he thought he had escaped. But was he truly prepared to weave back into the fabric of vigilance? Megan re-entered the office, her expression a mixture of concern and resolve. Jake wanted to shelter her from the impending storm, but he felt the intensity of the moment draw her in as well. I can't ignore this, he found himself saying, the words surprising even him. People's lives are at stake. If Sam believes there's a chance to make things right, I can't turn my back, but... He took a deep breath, searching for the right words. I need to do this in a way that keeps my family safe. Megan nodded, understanding his quiet struggle. Then let's set some boundaries. You can help without losing yourself. You've worked so hard to change. Don't forget that, she said, her voice steadying him as he felt half in and half out of their new life. Jake's gaze returned to Sam, who was watching the exchange with an intensity that blended hope and caution. What do we need to do to begin? Jake asked, the words coming out almost as a challenge. An old thrill surged within him. The taste of purpose was sweet and addictive. With precise clarity, Sam laid out the fragmented pieces of the case, drawing connections and revealing potential leads. Jake listened, taking mental notes, grappling with the tension between his instincts and the encroaching reality. This was what he had excelled at once, the thrill of chasing truth, the camaraderie embedded in shared purpose. A part of him was drawn to it, gleefully anticipating the chase. Yet another part recoiled, frightened of the risks involved, not just for him but for Megan and their future. He was straddling both worlds. Could he selectively engage and still protect his new life? Could he redefine what it meant to serve without sacrificing his newfound priorities? As the conversation deepened, a flicker of the detective he used to be ignited a flame within him. Thoughts of the case entwined with his responsibilities as husband and father, compelling him to find harmony rather than chaos between them. I'll need you, Sam, Jake said finally, slowly realizing this endeavor could serve as a crossroads for him. But we do this my way. I have limits, and I'm setting them now. Sam nodded solemnly, recognizing the pact that was being forged. Jake's resolve crystallized into a determination that burned bright. The conflict laid bare, the ideal shape of his future still hazy. As they made plans, Jake felt a shift inside him, opening doors of insight into who he was becoming. Suddenly, the stakes didn't feel impossible. They felt like a challenge to be met, a hurdle to jump over with dignity and tact. But as the night wore on and their plans took shape, an unsettling thought plagued Jake. What unforeseen consequences would arise from this choice? Past shadows were not easily shaken off, and he still hadn't grasped the full depth of the web they were stepping into. As he left the office to join Megan, he wondered, what would be the cost of reigniting that spark from his past? Would it illuminate the way forward, or lead him down a path of darkness? The answers beckoned ominously, cloaked with uncertainty, and the challenge lay waiting just beyond the reach of his grasp. Was he ready to face what came next? Jake stepped out of the office and into the cool night air, the weight of the moment still lingering like the oppressive humidity of summer. His thoughts spiraled with each step toward home, where Megan awaited him. He had agreed to help Sam, but doubts gnawed at the edges of his resolve, threatening to undermine the fragile balance he had fought so hard to establish. Once inside, Jake found Megan in the kitchen, her silhouette framed against the warm glow of the overhead lights. She was chopping vegetables for dinner, the rhythmic sound of a knife against the cutting board punctuating the silence. He paused for a moment, drinking her in. This life of domesticity felt like a refuge, a stark contrast to the chaos he was about to invite back into his world. It's just you and me now, she said without looking up. The confidence in her voice was a balm to his frayed nerves, but he hesitated, unsure how to bridge the growing chasm between his obligation and his devotion to her. He eased into a chair at the kitchen table, watching as she moved with deftness, her focus entirely on her task. Sam found something, he began, and the simple act of sharing felt heavy. A case. He thinks it could be serious. Megan turned, knife poised in midair, her brow furrowing with concern. Serious as in life and death serious? More like shadows of our past, Jake admitted, the words tasting bitter as they left his lips. The excitement of once again feeling alive and useful was marred by the memories of risks taken and lives disrupted. He owed it to her to be completely honest. What do you mean by shadows? You left that life, Jake. You don't have to go back. Not now. Her voice was steady, but her eyes revealed the storm brewing within her. Jake raked a hand through his hair, frustration bubbling to the surface. but I feel it pulling me back. It's like I'm being offered a piece of who I was, the thrills, the certainty of purpose, he confessed, leaning forward, desperation lacing his tone. But it's not just about me anymore. There's you, and there's our future. We promised we would put each other first, she reminded him, stepping closer, concern shadowing her face. What makes you think you can do this without it consuming you? Her challenge struck a chord deep within him. The notion of returning to his old life surged like a raging tide, threatening to drown out everything he had achieved with Megan. Yet, in that dangerous pull, he felt the spark of a purpose reignite. Could he use what he had learned to protect rather than consume? Taking a deep breath, Jake forced himself to be logical. If there's a chance of helping people, of making right what went wrong. He trailed off, while Megan's steadfast gaze bore into him. I need to know you'll be careful, she said softly, her eyes searching his as if trying to read the depths of his resolve. Illusions of control can change from one heartbeat to the next. You can't ignore the risks. He remained silent. Could he truly walk the line between old Jake and the man he had become? A disquieting thought slipped into his mind. What if he failed to keep his promise? Would he be thrust back into darkness, drawing Megan into a storm he may not survive? Let's make a deal, he mustered, his voice stronger. I'll investigate, but only on my terms, to try and limit the impact on us. He felt the weight of commitment teeter, suspended in the air like a promise. Megan accepted his terms with a nod, but he also sensed doubt clouding her awareness. But Jake, she began, what if you discover things about yourself that demand to be re-explored? What if you find that you're more drawn to it than you thought? The question hung ominously between them, reminding Jake of the ultimate cost. Then I'll know I have to step back, he said firmly. Yet uncertainty rattled within him. He had ignited the fuel of curiosity and risk, and now it would be up to him to safeguard their balance. The reality of this path loomed ominously, like shadows cast in twilight. Later, as he lay awake in bed, staring at the ceiling, thoughts spiraled. Could he truly harness the dormant parts of himself buried beneath years of striving for domesticity? He felt the flicker of excitement battling with anxiety, a cacophony within him of all the trials he might face, and then the weight of contemplation settled like a heavy cloak. What hidden aspects of himself had he yet to uncover? As the clock ticked into the early hours, Jake recognized he stood before a juncture far more complex than he anticipated, and one that would demand everything he was willing to become, or shatter who he strived to be. Would he summon the courage to face what was inevitably coming, or would he lose all he had fought for in an attempt to reclaim his past? The answers awaited him, just beyond the horizon, and the first steps were already echoing in the stillness of the night. The following morning, Jake found himself at a crossroads that no amount of careful planning could prepare him for. The air felt thicker, laden with unspoken doubts and the persistent echo of uncertain choices. He had spent the night on the precipice of decision, a sleepless vigil spent grappling with the duality of his identity. Now he had to face the day, and what lay ahead could shatter or redefine him. Megan had left for work, a brief kiss on his cheek, and unyielding encouragement her only parting gifts. Just be careful, she had whispered, her voice a mixture of concern and belief. He had promised her caution, but how could he be cautious when the thrill of the unknown sang to him like a siren? Deciding to confront the unanswered questions, Jake pulled out a notepad, the one he used to jot down thoughts regarding his plans. He flipped to a blank page and began writing down everything he knew about Sam's lead. The case was connected to a smuggling operation rumored to be resurfacing in the area. Eyes glued to the paper, he started listing potential avenues for investigation, contacts from the past, places to explore, and people to question. A strange exhilaration surged through him as he brainstormed. This familiarity with danger felt revitalizing, but the sinister shadow of his past refused to stay quiet. He recalled the faces he had encountered before, both the allies and the foes, the ones that shaped him into who he was. He grimaced, understanding that he was not just diving into a case, he was wading into the waters of his former self, risking everything he had built. Memories of fractured trust and isolation flicked through his mind like movie scenes. signs that his engagement with this world was as perilous as it was promising. As he prepared to step out, an unexpected jolt of self-awareness gripped him. He was no longer the reckless kid chasing adrenaline, but a man carrying burdens more profound than mere thrills. He needed to wield his experiences as armor, not as invitations to chaos. He glanced into the mirror, sizing up a figure that felt foreign yet familiar, a man who yearned to balance courage and responsibility. In that moment, Jake questioned whether his past would be a guiding compass or a haunting specter. Would he execute this investigation with an intent to protect the path forward, or allow it to consume all he cherished? Arriving at the cafe where he was to meet Sam, Jake's pulse quickened. This was the threshold of temptation, the ultimate test of his resolve. The clinking of coffee cups and murmured conversations felt both distant and deafening. As he walked toward the booth in the corner, he rehearsed his intentions in his mind. Awareness, caution, purpose. Sam radiated a familiar energy, a magnetism that once pulled Jake into the depths of moral ambiguity. Their eyes met, and Jake felt the strange mix of nostalgia and anxiety. "I found something," Sam said, his tone a low whisper charged with urgency. Jake leaned closer, but as his interest piqued, so did his instinct for self-preservation. Could he dive into this conversation without losing himself? Sam laid out the details, the lure of action beckoning like a magnetic draw that made Jake's pulse quicken. Yet he clung to the mantra that had emerged during his sleepless night. Any choice, every step forward must protect what he held dear. "What if we go back in? But this time make a promise to protect those who can't protect themselves." Jake's voice trembled slightly as conviction battled hesitation. Sam raised an eyebrow. "You plan on playing vigilante with a side of redemption?" The quick laughter deflated Jake's serious undertone, igniting an unexpected swell of determination within him. "Not vigilante, more like a guardian," he replied, blushing slightly, but refusing to back down. With every word, he felt the tension between his craving for adventure and the need for responsibility morph into a steely resolve. Yet, the lingering question from his previous conversation with Megan pulsed through his mind. What if he didn't have the control he believed he possessed? The sun set outside the window, casting shadows that danced across the booth. The darkness felt like a bell tolling, a reminder of the dangers of this world, the stakes rising with every passing minute. And as Jake prepared to chart this unpredictable course, he sensed an impending confrontation, a reckoning of everything he would soon discover about himself. Would the man he hoped to become be enough to meet the old challenges awaiting him? Would he be able to stand against the tide of his past while finding a way to be the protector he aspired to be? The first step had been taken, but the real journey was just beginning, and Jake couldn't shake the sensation that deeper, hidden truths were lurking beneath the surface, ready to unveil themselves as the darkness descended. As Jake and Sam navigated through their conversation, the cafe transformed into a crucible of choices threatening to reshape his identity. Each word exchanged felt heavy with the weight of past sins and present aspirations, and within Jake surged an increasingly frenetic energy. The dialogues around them blurred into a muffled backdrop as his focus sharpened. "What's our first move?" he asked, forcing a calmness he didn't entirely feel. Sam leaned back, an amused smirk ghosting his lips. It was a familiar expression, one that Jake had seen many times when they embarked on reckless adventures. But this time, Jake wasn't looking for thrills or petty dares. Today he craved purpose. "I've got a couple of leads," Sam replied, sliding a hastily scribbled note across the table. "Old contacts who might know something about the recent uptick in shipments. We need to start somewhere." Jake's heart raced at the mention of contacts. They were familiar territory, but they were also ties binding him to a darker chapter, one filled with questionable alliances and ethical compromises. But the thought of being a guardian, of reclaiming control, overwhelmed the trepidation. "Let's reach out," he said, the certainty settling into his bones. As they made plans, Jake felt an unusual sense of clarity filling the corners of his mind. Each contact they discussed became a bridge, one leading him further away from that reckless youth and toward the man he needed to become. Yet, shadows from his past constantly played at the edges of his thoughts, reminding him that light often invited darkness. Could he walk this new path without tumbling into familiar traps? Once the conversation dwindled, a comfortable silence enveloped them. Jake's gaze flicked to the window where the last rays of daylight lazily succumbed to dusk. The city felt like a living entity, whispers of the past merging seamlessly with the pulse of the present. But as invigorating as their plans felt, hesitations echoed within him. Doubts about whether he could outsmart the ghosts of previous mistakes. "I get the feeling you're holding back," Sam remarked, pulling Jake from his reverie. "What gives?" Jake sighed, frustration bubbling beneath his surface. "It's complicated. Yes, we're heading into something dangerous, but it's more than just the thrill of the chase for me. I feel responsible now. There's so much at stake." "What's at stake is playing by a new set of rules," Sam shot back, voice thick with intensity. "You could be a player in this game, not just some watcher on the sidelines. That's the problem, isn't it? I can't shake the feeling that being active means flirting with chaos again. How can I protect those I care about while walking this line?" Sam's laughter echoed like ringing metal, sharp, yet oddly reassuring. "You want it all figured out before you take a move? That's not how this works." A wave of emotion swept through Jake. Frustration, guilt, a flicker of recognition. Was it true? Had he been so focused on preventing failure that he was blind to the power of taking risks? "Maybe I have to embrace the chaos," he murmured to himself, contemplating the depth of the notion. "To be that guardian, maybe I need to stop fearing the dark." "And that begins with trusting yourself, Jake," Sam said, his gaze direct and unyielding. "You don't have to shoulder this alone. Just be willing to take the leap." Jake sat in contemplative silence, every inch of him tingling with newfound determination. Perhaps his journey was not a linear path away from temptation, but rather an integration of all facets of himself. The shadows didn't have to dictate his choices. He could emerge around them, bolder and more grounded than before. "All right, let's put these plans in motion. I'll reach out to the first contact tonight," Jake affirmed, the gleam of certainty igniting a spark in his core. But as he stood to leave, a disquieting feeling washed over him. He didn't yet know how intertwined the threads of his past would become with the choices he was making now. What if that contact held more than just information? What if the past was reaching out, seeking to reclaim him? Jake looked back at Sam, resolve battling hesitation. "Let's do this. But we keep our eyes open. The past has a way of creeping into present moments, and I can't lose sight of what I've fought to build." As they exited the cafe, the night enveloped them, a dark canvas where the true challenge lay. Little did Jake know that the following moves would not only test his resolve, but also uncover layers of his character he had yet to understand. Could he face the inevitable confrontation with his past and continue evolving into the man he desired to be? Or would he remain entangled in the web of choices he feared would shatter his new identity? The answers waited, lurking in the shadows of the night, just out of reach, as Jake prepared to run headfirst towards an uncertain fate. The evening air was heavy with a blend of anticipation and unease as Jake stepped out into the dimly lit street. The shadows loomed larger, dancing alongside the fleeting remnants of his past, beckoning him to reconsider his path. He glanced at Sam, whose casual demeanor belied the significance of their undertaking. Jake felt a pang of doubt clawing at him. Could he truly reinvent himself? Every contact they would reach out to was a thread that could either secure his new identity or unravel it completely. "Let's hit the first contact," Jake said, forcing his voice to maintain a semblance of confidence. The flicker of fear didn't escape him, however. It sat just beneath the surface as a reminder of what was at stake, the life he had fought for, the one he was determined to keep intact. As they walked, the city unfolded around them, a sprawling mingling of bright neon lights juxtaposed with the undercurrents of the night. The sound of distant traffic merged harmoniously with the rhythmic beats of music pouring from a nearby bar. Jake struggled to listen, his mind too preoccupied with what lay ahead. "Hey," Sam broke the silence, his tone uncharacteristically serious. "Just remember what we talked about earlier. It's about trust. You need to trust yourself." He nodded, appreciating the sentiment but recognizing it as easier said than done. Trust had eluded him, entangled in the wreckage of past decisions that still haunted him. With every footstep, he was stepping closer to the unknown, and for someone who thrived on routine, it felt foreign. They reached an alleyway that Jake recognized all too well. Each step echoed his growing anxiety. "This is where we separate," Sam said, gesturing towards the entrance that would take Jake further into old haunts. "Don't stay too far, okay?" Jake responded, apprehensive about what lay on the other side. The potential for danger was palpable, a weight pressing down on him. "Stay steady," Sam encouraged before retreating to hold up his end of the plan. Alone, Jake took a deep breath before shimmying into the narrow passage. With every step deeper into the alley, he couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The familiarity of this space was like an old friend, with every brick and shadow echoing memories he would rather forget. He found the door he had been searching for, its paint peeling and frame warped. Taking a second to center himself, he raised his hand and knocked. A moment passed before the door creaked open, revealing Marco, a former associate who could be as unpredictable as he was resourceful. Time had changed him, his eyes now lined with experiences that mirrored Jake's own struggles. "Jake?" Marco greeted, a hint of genuine surprise flashing across his face. "What brings you here?" Jake hesitated, the words clinging to his throat like regret. "I need information on the recent shipments," he asserted, forcing authority into his tone. Yet even as he spoke, a part of him screamed that this was a dangerous game. Marco stepped aside, allowing Jake inside. As he crossed the threshold, he was engulfed in a haze of memories, scents of smoke and stale beer enveloping him like an old coat, familiar but suffocating. The dim light cast long shadows, underscoring the tension that hung in the air. "What do you really want, Jake?" Marco's voice was low, probing. Jake could feel the walls closing in, the confrontation morphing into a brutality he hadn't anticipated. "I want clean information, nothing messy, no games," he replied, struggling to maintain his position. But the undertow of vulnerability had surfaced, echoing doubt about who he was versus who he wanted to become. "Clean isn't how it works here," Marco shrugged, amusement dancing in his eyes. "You know that makes you a player, not just a pawn." Jake clenched his fists, grappling with the truth embedded in Marco's words. If he wanted to protect what was his, he couldn't approach this like a naive bystander anymore, not when the stakes had grown so large. He was grappling not just for information, but for his identity. The conversations that followed spiraled into nebulous territories, revealing not only what he sought but also deep-rooted fears he hadn't fully acknowledged. Each truth uncovered felt like a tether, sometimes binding him, sometimes loosening. As they spoke, Jake realized something crucial. Confronting Marco was forcing him to confront himself, a kaleidoscope of ambition interlaced with the ghosts of his past. With each passing moment, Jake's resolve solidified. The chaos he once feared could become his ally if he learned to wield it correctly. But at what cost? The air swelled thick with impending decisions, and as Jake prepared to exit, Marco's voice trailed after him. "You're not done with me yet, Jake. We'll meet again." Jake's heart quickened, an electric jolt coursing through him. He stepped into the cool night, uncertainty swirling as shadows cascaded down the alley. This wasn't just about getting information anymore. It was a deeper unveiling of his own character, a trial by fire. As the door clicked shut behind him, Jake felt something irrevocable shift within. The path forward was fraught with looming challenges, but he was no longer afraid. This time, he would welcome the uncertainty, for beneath it lay opportunities to redefine himself. But just as he rounded the corner, a nagging thought gnawed at him. What had he truly unleashed in making that first contact? As he navigated the streets, adrenaline surging, one question loomed larger than all others. How far would he go to protect the new identity he was forging? Jake stood on the edge of the precipice, the tension of the past and the uncertainty of the future swirling in his gut. The warmth of the evening sun faded, replaced by the cool embrace of dusk, reflecting the internal shift occurring within him. With every block he traversed, the lessons from his recent encounters ignited a steely resolve, a commitment to protect his family, his new identity, and the hope blossoming in him. Returning home, the familiar sights greeted him like long-lost friends. Yet this time, they felt different. each reminder of his life compelling him to uphold the promises he had made. He gripped the front door, allowing a deep breath to steady his racing heart. It was not merely a return, it was a reintroduction to the man he aspired to be. "Megan!" he called out, his voice resonating through the house, seeking her presence. The warmth in his tone contrasted with the earlier uncertainty. Every moment of doubt melted away into a resolve to forge connections and reject isolation. She appeared, wiping her hands on a dish towel, surprise flickering across her face. Her expression transformed into a subtle, knowing smile, a reassurance that he longed to see. "You're back early. How did it go?" she asked, stepping closer. Jake hesitated for just a moment, collecting his thoughts into manageable pieces. "I spoke with Marco," he said, the admission tasting slightly bitter, but recognition of its necessity grounded him. "It was complicated, but I realized I can't avoid confrontation with my past any longer." Megan regarded him, a mix of pride and concern flickering in her eyes. "What do you mean?" "I'm learning how to reclaim what he called clean information without getting caught up in old habits. I've realized that each of these interactions is a step toward becoming the protector I want to be, not just of this family, but in a broader sense." The weight of clarity settled over him, illuminating a pathway glimmering with possibilities rather than fear. "You're talking about trust again," she replied, encouraging him while probing deeper into his understanding. "Is this the new way forward you want to take?" Jake nodded, the weightiness of his commitment framing his thoughts. "I can't just be defined by the uniform I wear. I want to build something more meaningful than just being a badge. I want to be a bridge, not an obstacle, an agent for change." Her expression shifted, appreciation blooming in her gaze. "So you're ready to face the chaos with intention?" "Exactly. Instead of shying away, I want to engage deliberately but with caution," he affirmed, feeling an unwavering sense of strength swell within as he spoke. Just as he started to embrace this newfound clarity, memories of old struggles crowded his mind. Resolving to not let them overtake his momentum, Jake pushed them aside, shifting the focus back to Megan. "I need your help," he continued, a request blooming in the air. "Together, we can hold each other accountable as I navigate this." Her smile expanded, mutual understanding reflected in her eyes. "You're not alone in this, Jake. That's my promise to you." Jake felt the tension of the past beginning to melt, replaced by a constructive energy binding them together. In recognizing that vulnerability could be a source of strength rather than a liability, he had taken another significant stride toward completing his transformation. As they settled into the evening's routine, a sense of groundedness washed over him. The delicate balance he had established felt real, no longer merely an ideal, but an achievement he could cultivate. Intertwined within his duties, family became the bedrock for rediscovering purpose. He knew the path ahead would be fraught with difficult choices. He would face temptations to slip back into the familiar chaos he had once thrived in. There would be intersections with relentless shadows of his past, the weight of decisions threatening to unravel him. Yet, he felt fortified, resolved to handle the urgency of this next chapter with clarity and intention. Later that night, as he and Megan prepared for bed, he reflected on how far he had come, embracing his flaws and understanding their implications in an entirely new light. The specter of doubt loomed less ominously than before, replaced by tangible determination. In that moment, Jake recognized the significance of what he had achieved. The desire to protect had expanded from his uniform to more profound ways of connecting. Skilled communication had replaced isolation, empowering him to forge relationships rather than hide from them. Jake drifted off to sleep that evening with the sense of a solid foundation beneath him. He was no longer a fractured man burdened by the past. He had proven to himself that he could indeed build a future woven with integrity, determination, and love. As he entered a new day, Jake felt the unmistakable rhythm of solid confidence coursing through him, a promise of transformation rooted in authenticity. He understood now that the truest measure of success lay not solely in the battles fought, but in the relationships nurtured, and for that, he was ready. This was not merely a conclusion, it was a beginning, marked by the resolute choice to confront challenges with newfound courage and to embrace every opportunity presented along the way. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. This is the moment to show your support. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Your voice matters. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Don't wait even one more second to share. Only true fans of personal overcoming stories understand the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.